Hi, my name is George Visger, and I'm going to tell you about your responsibilities at the Metro Air Park. You have a job at Metro Air Park because Metro Air Park Property Owners Association have a Habitat Conservation Plan, or HCP, with the wildlife agencies. You have an important part in making sure this agreement holds. This video will explain it. For the next 20 minutes, I'll tell you how to make your job easier. This is the Habitat Conservation Plan for the Metro Air Park Development Project. It's 151 pages describing what needs to be done in order to minimize or avoid injury or destruction of protected plants and animals and their habitat on the Metro Air Park site. It's a complicated legal agreement between the property owners and the government wildlife agencies, and it's the reason the property owners received permission to build the project. As a condition of this agreement, every person who works on the Metro Air Park site for the next 50 years is required to carry out Habitat Conservation Plan procedures. The information in this video will familiarize you with your responsibilities as an employee at the Metro Air Park work site, help you avoid any problems, and make doing your job out here on the Metro Air Park site a lot easier. Your part is to look out for Habitat Conservation Plan plants and animals and do certain things to protect them if you encounter them. It really is very simple. At the end of this video, you'll know everything you need to do if you do encounter them. The Habitat Conservation Plan is an extremely important document. This project could only happen because the Habitat Conservation Plan agreement was signed by the owners and the agencies. It was not easy, fast, or cheap for the Metro Air Park Property Owners Association to get this to happen. It is a product of years of effort on the part of the property owners. Controversy and lawsuits have surrounded the project from the time the property owners first proposed the idea and throughout the development of the Habitat Conservation Plan. That is why it is very important that everyone follows the procedures that have been agreed upon in the HCP. As you may know, state and federal laws protect certain plants and animals and the habitat they need to survive. These laws come from the state and federal Endangered Species Acts. Under these laws, it is illegal to kill or injure protected plants or animals in the course of doing your job. This can be a huge problem for construction. Deaths always occur. The Habitat Conservation Plan makes an exception, allowing deaths as long as rules are followed. Metro Air Park is being built in the Natomas Basin in Sacramento County. There are some rare plants and animals that live in this area that rely on the special conditions this land provides. All of these special conditions combined are called habitat. An animal or plant depends on its habitat for the things it needs to live, like food and shelter. All phases of this construction project will take place in the habitat of 14 protected plants and animals. The site itself has historically been home to hundreds of different species, 14 of which are listed for protection in the HCP. I'm going to tell you what the HCP procedures are for the 4 species you are most likely to encounter during your work, but you can find complete descriptions of all the listed species in the Sensitive Species Handbook. You will receive a copy of the handbook after you've finished watching this video. It is important that you read it before working on the site because you are required to know about all these species. The book will also be available at the work site at all times. In exchange for permission to move forward with construction, the Metro Air Park Property Owners Association has agreed to do several things. First, they will pay for the land that will be protected so these plants and animals will continue to have a place to live. Second, they have committed to having everybody who works on this project avoid willfully harming or killing protected species. If a protected species is killed or harmed in the course of work, it must be reported to the appropriate people. These actions you will be required to take are what this video is all about. The Habitat Conservation Plan has specific requirements. I'll tell you what they are for the animals you're most likely to see in just a moment. In general, most important is keep your eyes open, stop if you see anything, and radio your biological monitor. A biological monitor will be available to you at all times. You must notify this person when this happens. Not everyone is used to identifying animals in the wild. Just do the best you can, and when in doubt, stop what you are doing and let the biological monitor do their job. I'll tell you how to contact them later in this video. You may sometimes find dead or injured animals on the site. If a dead or injured animal is found, don't move it. Tell the biological monitor immediately, because they have to notify the wildlife agencies by phone within 48 hours. The biological monitor must also provide written notification to the wildlife agencies within 3 days detailing where and when the animal was found and the suspected cause of death. Even if you have just killed the animal yourself, it is important to notify the biological monitor. As long as you follow the procedure, you will not be blamed or in any trouble. This might seem like a lot of work for an animal that is already dead, but it's an important part of the agreement and it's part of your job. Remember, never pick up a dead or injured animal. If an animal is not moving, or if it allows you to get close to it, it is probably dead, sick, or injured and should not be handled under any circumstances. Besides the health and safety risks you would face from a dead or injured animal, it is important that the biological monitor sees the animal exactly as you found it. In addition to having the biological monitor and notifying them of HCP-listed animals you might see, one of the main differences you'll find between working on this project and most others is that there will be certain areas around the site that will be off limits to all construction activities at certain times. These areas will be marked with construction stakes with a red tape header, or they'll be fenced off with orange construction fencing. These limits must be strictly respected. In addition to the construction ban beyond these limits, this means that no equipment, supplies, or scrap material may be stored outside the limits, and no vehicles are allowed beyond them. Only established roads may be used to travel within the site. Shortcuts are prohibited. As a general principle, don't harm any animal needlessly. This includes jackrabbits, any snakes, lizards, anything. Try to be respectful of all wildlife species you encounter. Here's an important point. The HCP agreement only frees you and your employers from responsibility for accidentally killing or injuring endangered animals if the deaths or injuries are reported. Officials from both the California Department of Fish and Game and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will visit the site regularly to monitor HCP agreement compliance. If they discovered unreported deaths of protected species, the consequences for you and your employers will be just as harsh as if there were no agreement at all. Now let's talk about some of the animals we might see on the Metro Air Park worksite. The first animal I'd like to tell you about is the giant garter snake. This snake did not get its name by accident. They can be big. Adults can grow to a length of 5 feet. The coloring is much like a common garter snake, black or dark brown with bright yellow or orange stripes. Their primary habitats are irrigation ditches, rice fields, standing water, and the dry land around these wet areas. Biological surveys performed in the Natomas Basin by the U.S. Geological Survey have found that the giant garter snake regularly occurs in the Metro Air Park project area and is the protected animal you'll most likely to find. Most of the irrigation ditches have been drained and water removed from the Metro Air Park site, so the snake's numbers should be reduced, but they will still be around because the neighboring rice fields have not been drained and are one of the snake's favorite hunting spots. The areas of the site you're most likely to see giant garter snakes are shown here on the map in blue. They're areas that border on rice fields or canals, bodies of water that cannot or will not be drained during the course of construction. You should be on the lookout for snakes at all times, but it's in these areas that you are most likely to encounter one. There are several other situations where you might also see a giant garter snake. The snakes often hide in underground burrows during the heat of the day and come out of their burrows at sunrise to bask in the sun. They are often seen basking on warm road surfaces shortly after or during sundown. This means that you need to watch out for them when you're driving. Basking snakes may be killed at dusk when they aren't clearly visible. This means you might see dead ones on the road. Giant garter snakes often use dry brush or grassy areas as a place to hide or travel from one ditch to another. When you're clearing brush or grass, keep an eye out for giant garter snakes. During the winter, the snakes hibernate underground in burrows. For this reason, it is very important during this period to watch for burrows that are uncovered during excavation operations. In addition to their natural habitat, giant garter snakes may use the fill or debris from construction for shelter. To discourage snakes from taking up residence in your materials, all debris and fill must be promptly removed within 48 hours of the end of construction in an area. In addition, during the winter and spring months between October 1 and May 1, when snakes hibernate and the materials will be especially attractive to snakes, the debris must be inspected by the biological monitor before it's moved. This is to make sure any snakes that have taken up residence in your materials can be removed before they get harmed. So now you know what a giant garter snake looks like and where you might find them. But what are you required to do if you do encounter one? Just stop what you're doing and immediately tell your biological monitor that you might have spotted a giant garter snake. Then work on something else for a while. Once you've notified the biological monitor, it's their job to take care of it. Complying with the Habitat Conservation Plan for giant garter snake only requires slight changes in your work routine. Just do these 3 things. Keep an eye out, stop if you see anything that remotely resembles a snake, and notify your biological monitor. Pretty simple, huh? The second animal you have to be on the lookout for is the Swainson's hawk. The Swainson's hawk looks similar to other hawks that live in the area, but is sometimes distinguishable from other hawks you might encounter by its long, narrow, pointed wings. The coloration of the Swainson's hawk varies quite a bit, but will almost always be brown with some white patches. Realistically, you will probably only see them far away in a tree or flying overhead. It may be impossible at this distance to tell them from other hawks or birds. For this reason, it is important to look for Swainson's hawk's nests. Nests are large and platform-like, built mostly with sticks near the tops of tall trees. The Swainson's hawk nests in trees in the Natomas Basin and feeds on the rodents and insects that live in the fields all around and within the project site. If you see a nest in a tree or a bird that you suspect could be a Swainson's hawk, notify the biological monitor right away. Previous surveys found 1 nesting tree on the site and 2 just southwest of the Metro Air Park. The on-site tree has been removed to make way for construction. However, special procedures are required if there are nesting trees within 1/2 mile of the site. If this is the case, your supervisor or the biological monitor will let you know. Heavy construction equipment will have to be limited to an area outside of a 1/2 mile radius of the nest during critical periods. Heavy equipment includes anything that is loud and would disturb the birds or their young, like scrapers, backhoes, dump trucks, etc. In certain cases, some maintenance operations might be unavoidable within the 1/2 mile radius. The 8CP agreement allows for the performance of specific types of regular maintenance even within the off-limits area. However, special care must be taken to avoid disturbing the Swainson's hawks. Consult with your supervisor to find out what is considered regular maintenance and what is considered construction. Of course, all the other 8CP procedures for other species still apply when you're doing this kind of maintenance work. In the event that a tree with a Swainson's hawk nest needs to be removed, as happened with the tree mentioned earlier, consult the biological monitor. Tree removal will only be allowed between October 1 and February 1. This is because during the winter, nests are not occupied, so no young will be harmed by a removal during the season. Since the main concern with Swainson's hawks is nesting, looking out for it is pretty easy. If you see a nest tree, tell your biological monitor. They'll figure out if there's birds using it, what kind of birds, and how to proceed. Another bird to watch for is the loggerhead shrike. The loggerhead shrike is a bluish-gray colored bird with a large head in proportion to its body, black and white wings and tail, white chest and belly, and a black stripe, which we call a mask, across its eyes and forehead. Its big beak, large head, and mask are always good ways to tell it apart from other birds. The shrike is often seen in the Metro Air Park area and could nest in shrubs or trees on the work site. Nests are hard to see because shrikes like to build them behind a dense cover of leaves, but you might see the birds outside the trees or shrubs they're nesting in, flying back and forth with food or nesting materials in their beaks. If you see a shrub or tree with 1 or more birds coming and going frequently, stop working and notify the biological monitor whether the birds look like shrikes or not. Also, stop working and notify the biological monitor if you see dead insects or small animals impaled on thorns, twigs, or fencing. Another animal you might see is a burrowing owl. These owls are little short characters who make their homes in abandoned rodent holes. They're about 6 inches tall with long skinny legs and yellow eyes. Unlike most owls, the tops of their heads are smooth with no ear tufts or horns. Also, unlike other owls, they're often seen during the day. Biological surveys have already found them nesting on the site. These small owls especially like to make their homes in rodent burrows in the sides of ditches or canals. But any rodent hole in the ground anywhere on a site could be a nest or burrow. Along with giant garter snake burrows, be sure to watch for owl burrows when you are excavating. Common signs of an owl's burrow include feathers, whitewash, which is a substance that resembles white paint splattered on the ground, or pellets, which are clumps of undigested food like bones and fur. Burrowing owls have a strange habit of decorating the entrances of their nesting burrows with interesting objects. If you see a hole with scraps of paper, pieces of metal, or anything like that conspicuously scattered around it, it might well be a burrow for an owl. The owls will also use dog or coyote droppings for this purpose. Burrowing owls will also nest in debris piles, including construction debris, and they may even make a home in a drainage pipe or open utility box. They can establish new nest sites in unexpected places in a short period of time, so be on the lookout for these birds. Tell the biologist if you spot anything you think might be a burrow. Pre-project surveys will find active burrows and label accordingly. Labels will be clear, but you never know. The birds move around. It's best not to take any chances. Alert biological monitors if you see any signs. The other consideration with the burrowing owl is poisoning. Ground squirrel and rodent poisons have caused a large decline in the population of these birds, so don't use anything of that sort on the site. In fact, there are specific rules regarding any kind of trapping or poison use at the Metro Airpark site. Never conduct any kind of poison control unless you've consulted your supervisor and they have given you instructions based on pest control regulations and HCP restrictions. This information will be available on the site at all times, along with all the rules of the HCP. So that's it. There are 4 main species to look out for: the giant garter snake, Swainson's hawk, loggerhead shrike, and burrowing owl. The ways to alter your routine should sound familiar by now. Keep your eyes open, stop working, and call a biological monitor. It can't hurt to tread just a little more lightly. You can do this by staying inside the marked construction zones, staying on established roads and not taking shortcuts, and by being cautious whenever you're driving on the site. It's important to know the Habitat Conservation Plan procedures are law. They're enforceable. Civil and criminal penalties like fines and jail have been given. Your job and the success of the project depend on following the rules. There are people on site to help. Protecting animals is important, and so is your role in that. I'm not trying to make things harder for you. I'm just trying to prepare you for what is expected of you at the Metro Airpark project. You will receive a card after watching this video with a phone number printed on the back. This is the biological monitor's number, which you will call if you have any encounters with protected animals or if you have questions about your responsibilities under the HCP. The Sensitive Species Handbook also has a phone number in it. You are required to keep the card with you at all times when you're on the Metro Airpark site as proof that you have received this training. You will be required to show it to any agency official or supervisor who requests to see it. Please keep it somewhere safe. You will also get a hard hat sticker to show you have watched this video presentation. Thanks for spending your time watching this video. I hope this was clear and makes your work easier and trouble-free. Biological monitors can answer any further questions. Remember, your employers are dependent on you to make the Habitat Conservation Plan part of your routine. You have the key role in making the project run smooth with respect to environmental regulations.